Good morning. Welcome to the Los Angeles World Affairs Council and Town Hall. I'm Kim McClary, President and CEO, and it's my very great pleasure to welcome you all here today. We are pleased to present a very timely conversation with University of California President Michael Drake. Our connections with the University of California are very deep. Over the past 20 months, we have been fortunate to host several University of California professors as subject experts on national and international topics covered in these live streams. I also want to acknowledge two Los Angeles World Affairs Council and Town Hall board members for their continued service. Chancellor Jean Block of the University of California, Los Angeles, and politics professor Dan Schnur, who teaches at UC Berkeley. We are thrilled and honored by President Drake's presence today. Dr. Drake was appointed as the 21st president of the University of California in August 2020. He is the first Black leader in the university's 152-year history. President Drake previously led the Ohio State University system from 2014 to June 2020. Prior to his 6 years at Ohio State, his entire academic career has been at the University of California. Joining us today as moderator is Teresa Watanabe. Teresa is the higher education journalist at the Los Angeles Times. She is also the president of the Los Angeles chapter of the Asian American Journalists Association. Teresa, it's time for me to bring you on and introduce President Drake. We're so looking forward to today's conversation. Thank you so much for moderating today.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. And President Drake, it is wonderful to share this time with you. And we have so much to get to, so let's just plunge in.
Okay.
And while we will be talking a lot about policy today, I would love to just start with a personal question. You were born in 1950, before Brown v. Board of Education, before the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Your father was a doctor and your mother a social worker. So what was it like for you and your family to grow up during a time where there was legalized racism still in many parts of the country? And how did that shape your attitudes toward achievement and challenge?
Well, first, Teresa, nice to see you, and I hope that you had a happy Thanksgiving and are looking forward to a good holiday season, but very nice to see you, and thank you. And, you know, I'm like all of us, growing up, you know your family, and you grow into a set of circumstances and a world that is what it is. You don't know any different. And so what I appreciated was really the love and support of my parents, and the fact that we had a chance to grow up. My father, you mentioned, was a medical doctor. You know, he really was a football player. That's what he wanted to be always, and I think medicine was his second choice. I know that would have been his second choice. His first choice would have been to play professional football. I mean, I have a picture of him in a football uniform in back of me here in my office. And so I grew up in a household where athletics was really important, taking care of your body, being in shape. My father lifted weights until he was well into his 90s. And then also your education and your academic preparation were really important. He had a wonderful career as a physician. He practiced medicine until he was 99. And so the concept of mind and body and the role that universities have in both was something I grew up with. My mother also, unusually and wonderfully, had gone to college. They met in college in the 1930s, and so she was always a stickler for education, and so that's what I knew. I did watch the world change politically from the completely segregated community that I grew up in. If you look at a picture of my kindergarten, 100% of us were Black, and that was the norm. And then the world changed to more diversity slowly as those years rolled forward. But that was an active process that continues today, honestly, the process of inclusion and of treating people fairly and equally and appropriately. That's still work that we have to do as a country.
Well, right. I mean, let's fast forward 7 decades.
Yes.
And the world, yeah, the world has changed so much, and the UC system has changed a lot as well. I mean, in 1950, there were only 2 campuses at Los Angeles and Berkeley, and now you've got 10. What has been the largest change that you have seen during your years at UC, first as a student and then a faculty member, then a chancellor at UC Irvine, and now as president of the whole system?
Yeah, well, one thing that you mentioned is diversity. I know when I became chancellor at UC Irvine, a colleague had a copy of Fortune, I think it was Fortune magazine, one of those magazines I'm forgetting at the moment, but there was a cover story on Clark Kerr, and they had a picture of Sathergate at UC Berkeley at noon, filled with students. And someone was talking about the great diversity that she had experienced during the 1960s in college. And I went and looked at this picture. Actually, I got it printed and put it up in my office. And there are about 100 people who were identifiable in this photograph, student faces. One woman may have been Asian. The other 99 were not. So the great diversity was minimal all those years ago. It's completely different today. We're still working, but we have much more inclusion and diversity. Also much more inclusion and from people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, people from rural parts of the state. So this is a work in progress, but we look very differently now than we did 50 years ago. The university has grown dramatically. You know, we're now above 285,000 students, so that's much larger. And I think that our influence across the country and around the world has grown in appropriate ways. We were leading flagship public research universities 10, 20, 50, and 100 years ago, but our breadth and our expanse and our reach and our connection with people has only grown during these years, all to, I think, our great benefit.
Right, yeah. Um, well, when you came to UC in August of 2020, you said that you were looking forward to meeting the challenges of the global pandemic, climate change, and the yawning wounds of social inequity or social injustice. So let's start with the pandemic, all encompassing, unprecedented.
Yeah.
What have been the biggest lessons that you have learned handling this huge epic pandemic at UC?
You know, lessons I've learned or things that we knew that have been, I think, confirmed for us. One is that public health works, and that if you follow public health measures, the more faithfully you can follow appropriate public health guidance, the better you'll do. So we've seen on our campuses where our students and faculty and staff have followed rules quite well, that the impact of the pandemic, while being overwhelming and changed everything we've done, our level of severe illness and death has been low compared to the surrounding communities. Our level of infection has been very low compared to surrounding communities. So we're very pleased to see and to be able to exhibit that public health does work and does matter. And you know, another thing I'd heard once from someone, they said, never bet against Mother Nature. Mother Nature bats 1,000 is the line. And I think that means in this case that the virus is going to behave like viruses behave and do all it can to replicate, to mutate, and to infect. We, by our behavior, can make it easier for the virus to do that or more difficult. Wearing a mask makes it more difficult for the virus. Not wearing a mask makes it easier. Being vaccinated makes it more difficult for the virus. Not being vaccinated makes it easier. And what we see in our communities is the result of that equation, of that algorithm. And our campuses have really responded well. For safety, let me say safety first. Let me say second, the real change of going to virtual education overnight was a change for our faculty, a change for our students, a change for our staff, and people really rolled their sleeves up to say, this is these are the circumstances we have to face. How can we be successful in these circumstances? And have done an incredible job of being able to continue to move forward amidst these challenges. And then the third thing I'll say is that the courage and heroism and dedication of our health services staff, our doctors, our nurses, the food service workers. I've been in our hospitals, and there's a battle that's going on in our hospitals 24/7, 365. And if you walk the halls, you see that battle being raged. It's being raged as we speak, and every day. And and they have saved people's. They're saving people's lives in this very moment, and they continue to do that every day. And we're very proud of that, and want to do all we can to continue to support them.
Do you think the pandemic will permanently alter higher education?
I think the pandemic will permanently alter human life on our planet. It will change the way that we do things, and because we we see this happening, we see what's going on, and there's the only thing that's guaranteed is that if after this there will be other viruses that jump from animal species to human, or whatever happens to make them something that's a problem, not a problem for us now, and they will become a problem. And what will determine the effect or the impact of that is how we respond. So the first SARS, we responded in a particular way. It wasn't quite as infectious. That's good. It was quite lethal, but it wasn't quite as infection. And in fact, maybe it's as infectious, its lethality made it so that it wasn't quite as easy to spread. You know, this virus spreads with people who are asymptomatic and feeling fine. And so we have to, I think all of us, learn how to protect ourselves from these things. This has been going on for eons, forever. What's changed is that we're much more able to travel. I know, I didn't read it in your paper, but I know your paper reported yesterday, because every paper reported that there's now a case of the Omicron virus in the US. It's because someone could, in this era, travel from South Africa to California in a day. If this were 100 years ago, such a thing was not possible. But today people can get on airplanes, and travel around, and there are an infinite number of viruses that are being transmitted or that are being transported. Some of those are dangerous to us, and as what we're learning from this one is how important it is for us to be able to react appropriately to them. So that was a long answer to your question. The answer is yes, that there is a change, and the change is that we have to understand that this is a part of our future and respond appropriately.
Omicron, do you feel it's going to set back your UC's back to in-person instruction at all?
I hope not. So first, I don't know. My wife would say, after you say I don't know, there should be silence. And why you say I don't know, then you're still talking. I haven't learned yet, I guess. But what I'd say about this is that we have our students, faculty, and staff have done a wonderful job of being vaccinated, understanding the personal and public responsibility that they have to try to do all they can to be vaccinated. Second, we have a ubiquitous mask wearing. I'm in my office alone, but my mask is, here it is, right? I mean, we have when I go down the hall, I put my mask on. We have we do ubiquitous mask wearing indoors. And I believe that mask wearing indoors, being vaccinated, wearing a mask, particularly when indoors, having adequate ventilation inside our buildings, that those things will minimize the spread of the virus. And over time, it will, you'll be protected against severe disease and also minimize the spread. And that's what we all have to do to help this go away. And our efforts are to get that to spread that as far as and wide as we can.
All right, so on to another topic. Judging by our readers, the #1 UC topic of interest is probably admissions and enrollment.
Yeah.
Last year, more than 200,000 freshman applicants for about 46,000 seats. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to expand UC capacity. I know that you have stated that UC would like to grow by 20,000 by the year 2030. But that still won't meet the demand. And I'm just wondering, why not add more than that? And what would it take to do so?
First, you mentioned the changes in the university over the last half century, the time that I've been here. On the day that I arrived, we were a wonderful institution, and our goal was to do everything we could to be better. And that's the goal today. It's to try to be better today than we were yesterday, and better tomorrow than today. And we are flattered and pleased and honored by the interest that students have in applying to us, and that's great. And So for those reasons, we continue to do what we can to expand. There's a balance between being who we are and expanding. We could expand into something else and create seats without value, and that wouldn't be what we'd want to do. So what we want to do is to expand as we can to admit more students. We have tens of thousands more students that we are enrolling today than we did 5 years ago, and that would be true as we went to 5 years before that. 20,000 students is roughly the size of another campus. A campus, Santa Cruz campus, is that ballpark size. And so we've added a campus at Merced. I was able to be on the planning committee for that campus and very proud of that campus. But that's been a generation to get to 10,000 students. So it takes a while to build a campus, to get it started, to bring students in. We want the entire system to add 20,000 students over this decade, twice as many as we have now at Merced, because we think we can do it faster that way, and for less expense. Now, a lot of that growth, there'll be growth at Merced per se, so that's part of the solution. But the idea is to grow by 20,000 over this decade. As we're able to do more, we will grow faster. Do I expect that we'll grow by 20,000? I fully expect we would exceed that. That's a goal that we can see. We can aim ourselves for that, and then I think we'll continue to grow as we can continue to support ourselves. We need the faculty. We need the space to be able to house students. All those things are limiting factors for us. But we also will grow by using more technology, more online education, distance education, partnerships, other things that will allow us to grow students broadly and quickly. So appreciate the interest that people have in this very much. It's appropriate, flattering, and what we strive for. We will continue to grow and provide opportunity for students really as fast as we can while maintaining and improving our quality.
Well, after the Great Recession, some UC campuses substantially increased the proportion of out-of-state and international students to obtain more non-resident student tuition, but that created a huge pushback. State legislators, California constituents were not happy with that. And so UC was pressured to put a cap of 18% system-wide on non-residents. The legislature is now going back to UC and saying, hey, we want you to reduce those numbers even more, and we will give you the money to do so to replace the lost supplemental tuition. Do you agree that the share of non-resident students should continue to be reduced, and why or why not?
Yeah, I believe that non-resident students actually contribute a lot to the quality of the education. We are we want to be a world quality, world impacting institution. We have to have people from around the world in our midst to be able to make that true. So tuition aside, there's great value from people who come from different backgrounds and different points of view to helping us to learn about and be the best institution that we can. I until this last year, I didn't do it last year because of the pandemic, but I taught undergraduate students all during my time as chancellor and then at Ohio State. And my classes would be overwhelmingly students from within the state, but there'd be students from out of state or out of the country. And I promise you that our discussions, our seminars were different because we had a world view in our discussion rather than just the view of the state that I happen to be living in. Great people within the state, but the worldview really helped them a lot. So so we want to be the best we can be. We wouldn't be the best we could be unless we had students from a wide variety of perspectives and backgrounds. That said, our primary responsibility is to train California students. And so the agreed upon a ratio of roughly 5 to 1, a little more than 5 to 1 in-state versus non-resident, that's both US and international non-resident. That's the place that we seek. Some of our campuses went to a higher percentage of non-residents than that, and the agreement that we have is for them to trend down. To be honest, some of our newer campuses would seek to have more non-residents, really for that diversity of opinion and experience that enriches them. And if I asked you about your own college, I don't know your college experience, and you think about the people who you knew and the people that you learned from, people who came from far away actually made you learned a lot from them, and we want that learning to happen as well. So our concept is to grow California spaces and to have the right number of, but to be a world university, we need to have people from other places to help our perspective as well. And we think we can achieve a good balance there.
Well, I actually was an out-of-state student from Washington
There we go.
to, I'm sorry to say, USC, but right, yeah. All right, so there is a move to drop standardized test scores, which UC already has done. And there's also talk about shifting away from the traditional point-based grading system towards some new ways of evaluating student achievement and talents. But that is criticized by some to move away from quantitative metrics. Some say will water down UC student quality. So I'd love to hear what you think of when you think of what is UC student quality and how should that be assessed?
Well, first, I appreciate you. I actually didn't know that you were an out-of-state student, so you really added to the diversity of life and experience at your university, and benefited from people from different places. So you're my example, and so that's that's my answer. I think it's very, very important. So I was admissions dean at UC San Francisco's medical school years ago, and so I had a lot of hands-on experience with admissions decisions and admissions policies. What we find is that there are many things that affect a student's strength and appropriateness for being admitted to a particular program. And so we use a comprehensive, I like the word comprehensive more than holistic by just my own parlance. I know the word uses holistic, but it means the same thing, that looking at the student's life, their goals, their accomplishments, their challenges, their promise broadly. What we found is that by looking at 15, 18 different characteristics, we could get a pretty good idea of students for whom we would be a good fit, who we would be able to serve appropriately. When we remove the quantitative test score from that assessment, it doesn't make much difference. There's minimal change to what happens. We look at our class this year versus our class last year. All of the groups that we were interested in admitting, we have more students in all categories. We have an increase in lower income and underrepresented students compared to the year before, but we've seen that every year, and this increase was not dramatically more than the year before that. So we find that there was very little benefit to using these standardized tests. The standardized tests were a barrier to many of our students. Honestly, I'm saying this by opinion, I think the psychological barrier was at least as important as the actual barrier to these tests. Students have felt, because we were able to look at them more broadly, maybe than students would realize. They say, my goodness gracious, the average is 96th percentile, and I got an 80th percentile, I'm toast. We would try to look at everything in context, and it didn't make that much difference. When we moved the test away, we found that the benefit that they provided was minimal, and the applicant community felt more confident in applying. And so we've seen an uptick in applications, and really an uptick in those who we could admit, and the quality of students that we've admitted this year is outstanding. So we believe it's going to work well for us as we move forward. Let me say something. You mentioned grading. And grading and evaluating, those are all difficult things. We're continuing to work on the best way to do that. We've tried, and there have been multiple studies of evaluating grading in different way. That's an ongoing process. We believe in assessment and feedback for students, and that's just critical for an institution like ours. So we'll continue to do that. We want to do it in a fair way and the most appropriate way.
Well, we've talked about the demographics of UC students changing significantly in the last decade. Many more first-generation students, low-income students, students from underrepresented minority groups. But UC surveys show that more of them are becoming increasingly dissatisfied with their experiences at UC and even regret their choice to attend UC. Why are more such students expressing that dissatisfaction, and how can UC improve their experience?
You know, I appreciate that. We do undergraduate and graduate student surveys to see how our students are doing over these years and compare ourselves. And we've seen something this last several years. We are more diverse than we've ever been, and we pulled in students from more places than before. We approached 40% first generation undergraduate students, and this would be double the numbers that you'd see if you went to places like the Big Ten, otherwise similar institutions. So we're really excited about that. But we know that the world does not treat everyone the same. You know, that as we bring in more students from more diverse backgrounds, they bring with them expectations and history that come from their circumstances. And as an institution, we have to continue to adapt to that and to move forward. So we get information from students, we listen to it, and we do what we can to plug that in to those things that will create a positive experience. I'll also say that this is we found it to be a challenging time for everyone. We find it a challenging time for our staff, and honestly, a challenging time for our faculty, a challenging time for people in the world broadly. The level of political rancor and the polarization in our society really has made this a tough and stressful time. We're layering now on top of this the pandemic. So we have a lot to do to try to help everyone see a positive and successful future for themselves, and we as an institution want to be committed to making that possible.
Well, I know UC is very aware of the projected shortfall in college graduates needed for the state's economy. And I'm wondering how well are UC graduates aligned to the state's workforce needs? You hear about these huge, impacted programs in biological sciences and computer sciences. And I'm wondering, do you think that UC should actually expand those programs and start paring back some of the less popular majors?
Well, we do see the demand and it sort of cycles. There's certain spheres in which there's very, very high demand for a period, and then it drops off a little bit. There was very high demand for pre-medical slots in my day, and up through the 90s, and then that demand fell off, and we started having a higher demand for engineering, and we saw that shift. When I first got to UC Irvine, we had a waning demand in computer science, and we made some adjustments, and then it became among our most popular programs. So we see these things cycle, and we want to be responsive both to the needs of the broader society and then also to the desires of our students, those who come to us. So we do adjust the sizes of classes and those things that we offer. I also feel that being broadly educated in any one of our majors is something that can prepare someone for an outstanding career. And we think about that and don't want to say, gosh, this is popular today, so let's cut out what we were doing entirely yesterday and switch over to just doing this thing. We want our students to have a broad menu of career paths and and broad menu of things that they can concentrate on in their studies. But we do that with the sensitivity to the needs of society and to moving forward. So business and engineering and other parts of our enterprise have grown dramatically over the last couple of decades. But we think a lot about the arts and humanities and making sure that we protect them as well.
Affordable housing crisis hitting California college students. There are UC students who are living in vans and living in hotels because there are not enough dorm rooms for them. And, UC never used to be expected to house students. UCLA used to be a commuter campus. So why is it important for UC campuses to actually provide housing for students? And how can UC go about and provide more of that?
A very, very important question. The affordable housing crisis is really hitting all of California. It's a major issue for us, and here and other places, but truly in California, there's really housing scarcity and a high cost of living, and so it makes it a challenge for students to find stable, affordable housing while simultaneously paying for a college education. I mentioned that we are continuing to look broadly to provide access to students from a wide variety of backgrounds, and that's great. but about 40% of our students are Pell eligible. That means they come from low to moderate income families. So there's stress. As we're able to provide affordable housing for our students, we can help to alleviate that stress. And actually, as we provide affordable housing on or near campus, do a couple other things. One, we provide housing for our students who need it. That's great. Make it more affordable. That's great. That depresses housing prices in the community, so that's great for our students as well. It means that the demand is not as high in the broader community, which helps to moderate prices. It also brings students closer to school and allows them to develop a community. Commuter life works, but there's also a community that develops on campus, and we like to have that robust community on campus. And then finally, we're very interested in our carbon footprint. I think that's a critical issue for the world. Students who live close don't have to drive and park and commute and spend time doing that. It helps the carbon footprint. It helps them be connected to the campus. Multiple studies show that retention and graduation rates are higher for students living on campus than students living in the community or commuting. And so for all those reasons, we think that affordable, quality, energy efficient housing is critical for our students. And so we've added about 14,000 beds since 2015, 2016. We have actually we acted about 15,000, and we're actually planning to build about another 25,000 by 2025. So we are very interested in creating that opportunity for our students.
I think UCLA announced that they would like to eventually offer a 4-year housing guarantee. Is that a realistic goal for all of the campuses?
We never stop at goals. We never say, "Gee, is that realistic?" And therefore we won't. We push toward unrealistic goals if they're the right goals. I think that I lived on campus my whole time, and it was easy and convenient, and I liked it. And had friends who lived in the community, and that was great to visit them. But it seemed like I really liked being there. So I'd be happy to have us expand the number of students who lived on campus for 4 years. Also understanding that that's not the right or best solution for everyone. So we want there to be some flexibility there. And so where we are now is to try to provide affordable, energy efficient, close-in housing for as many students as we think would appreciate that. And we have a long way to go to meet the demand that we have today. And we'll continue to try to move this forward. Let me say, I didn't mention this before, we have great partners in the state. I think that visionary leaders in the state of California have seen the housing crunch that hits our students and understand how that makes it difficult for them to be successful, understand that they can be more successful as they live close. And so have really thought of innovative ways to help support the university in supporting the housing needs of our students. And we really, really appreciate the governor and leaders in the legislature who've been helping us with that.
Well, you have successfully shepherded through cohort-based tuition models at The Ohio State University and more recently at UC. But is the cost of college still too high? Are debt loads still too heavy for your students? And if so, what more can UC do to make college more affordable?
Well, college is a great expense for all families and an overwhelming expense for families from lower and middle income brackets. And so we want to do all that we can to make college affordable. You know that for California students, about 57% of our students attend tuition free. Students from families that make up to $80,000 a year don't pay zero tuition, so that's very important. And then we have graduated tuition up to about $180,000. So when you see the tuition price, that's really for only those families in the $180,000, $200,000 bracket who pay the full price. Others pay a discounted or part of that, or families below $80,000 tuition has been eliminated. And it is made up by, they have Pell Grants and other kinds of Cal Grants, other grants that come to them, but they themselves have, we've eliminated tuition, which we think is very, very important. And you see the average debt at UC is about a third lower than the average debt of comparable universities across the country. So we're more affordable than comparable universities. Very pleased about that. We'd like to make it that all students could look forward to graduating with no debt. So we have a plan that we're rolling out, that we're continuing to tune, but that would allow for a debt-free pathway for the vast majority of our students. We believe this should be up and running by about 2025. There'll be some work. It's not free college, it's affordable college, and there'll be some requirement for work, but for students who don't have other funds. But that requirement will be lower than the average, or about the average that people now who are working. It'll be a capped amount, and we'd love to do everything we can to make the jobs that they have things that are also educational. So we'll work together to continue to expand those possibilities. I'd like for students to be able to graduate with zero debt, and if they have to have debt, I'd like that debt to be manageable. And so our programs are all set to try to do that, and we're making good progress there.
Well, right now the student self-help contribution is about $10,000. Are you working to lower or even eliminate that?
Yeah, we would work to lower that. I don't know that eliminating it is the right thing to do. I mean, the institution needs money to function, and if you eliminate it there, you then increase costs for someone else. We think that what we'd like is for everyone to participate at an affordable, appropriate level. And so that means, and that $8,000 to $10,000, that's tuition, room, and board combined. I mean, it's not just tuition. For our middle and lower income students, there's no tuition already. It's already that's already eliminated. We're really talking about living expenses and other things. And so we want to get to that self-help minimum to the lowest level we can, while continuing to support the greatest number of students that we can. And again, we're seen as a great value as we're compared to other institutions. We're lower by about a third on average for the amount of debt that our students leave with, which is, others aspire to be like us. We'd like to continue to lower that number and get it down as close to zero as we can.
All right. Campus police reform, it was something that you focused on when you first got here, and you have talked about how you yourself have experienced racial profiling throughout your whole life, as well as your sons. But there were some people who were disappointed that the big program that you rolled out did not substantially reduce funding for campus police, and redirecting it to alternative ways of securing campuses. So I'm just wondering, why not?
Well, it's not done yet. So I mean, we rolled out a program, a place to start from. This is a multi-year program, so it's not at all finished. And I will say first that we had many people contribute to the program. 1,500 people in writing. Hundreds of people in our symposia came with their ideas. We had ideas from the spectrum of positions of our very large university, and we appreciate that very much. Some of the conversations were uncomfortable, to say the least, and we did our very best to listen to those and then to roll out a platform for which we could begin. It's our campus safety plan, and the concept is to do all we can to improve safety on our campuses while improving the respect and feeling of belonging of all of those who are all of our students, all of our staff, all of our faculty, and our visitors. And so it's a work in process that begins where we are and moves forward. In that process, there will be certainly substantial investments in campus safety that will redirect the money that we're spending and the way we're spending that. That process has already begun. It will take time as we roll forward. Now we're doing the things we're doing most actively now. The first parts are data gathering, so we can understand exactly what's happening on the campuses. We want to use common definitions and vernacular to talk about things, so we can actually look at the experience that people are having, the safety experience that our students, faculty, and staff are having, so that as we make changes, we can make sure that we do those things while we're continuing to improve safety, and not that we're making changes at the expense of safety. So gathering data is the first part of that. Another thing that we're looking at is the sort of livery, the way our safety personnel are dressed and present themselves. We've already made changes there and looking for best practices, but we're moving. That's an evolutionary process that moves forward. We will involve the campus community very actively in first helping to look at the way that our police are interacting with the campuses and make sure that that's very positive. I want also to make sure that the police and campus community members have an active forum for discussion on an ongoing basis. It's so much better for both sides. If I'm going to call it two sides, I don't mean for those segments of our community to be in active communication when there are not problems, and not only come together when there are problems. Just if all of us know each other, we can do a better job of taking care of each other. So we have those programs underway as well. And as I said, this is a step forward. We want to continue to evolve and have a sustainable and impactful way of improving safety and improving the feeling of safety and comfort that people have on our campuses. And can we get everything that all 500,000 of our community members want on day one? And the answer is no. Can we move in directions that help most people? Yes, and we're pleased to be doing that.
Okay, let me ask you one last question before we open it up to the audience. You've been on the job for more than a year. What is your proudest accomplishment and your biggest regret?
Well, the thing that I'm most proud of really is the resiliency of the campus community broadly, and how our students, our faculty, and our staff really rolled their sleeves up at the beginning and have kept pushing forward with this as they're doing in this moment every day to be successful in this new and disrupted world. It really gives us great pride. Some of our campuses have won awards for their COVID response. At a place where it's maybe a little less visible but critically important, in our hospitals, we've stepped up to saving people's lives on a daily basis. I'm totally awed and proud of our health services personnel broadly. The attitude of staff that are more line staff, the people who drive for us, who who cook, who do all those kinds of things, the courage it takes to come to work and to make those things happen, it's really terrific. So I think that response of this community to continue to move forward and to continue to do that with a good attitude, I mean, I think that's been great. I'm really pleased that the working together with my chancellor colleagues and friends, many of whom I've known for many years, to really work together to do what we can to provide these 20,000 additional seats over a decade. That's, again, like adding a new campus without actually adding a campus. And I think everyone's on board with that. I think that's great. We had some other controversies that we were working on. I'm proud of my work with the regents on coming to solutions for some of the problems that were difficult for us. The cohort, the tuition stability plan, which gives stability for families from higher income backgrounds, being able to come and know your tuition is guaranteed to stay flat for 6 years. That's a big help there. It also provides more financial aid for lower and middle income families, so it makes the university more affordable. I think that's a big step forward, and the regents came together and supported that. The regents supported changing the language in our affiliation agreements with some of the hospitals and hospital systems we work with to do what we can to make sure that our values become the guiding principles that our employees use when they're working in those places without exception. And actually, I'm very pleased that those partners we're working with those partners to expand the services that they provide to Californians, and the regents were extraordinarily helpful. So I'm really pleased. I'm pleased about that. And I'm pleased about, lastly, I'll say, I'm very pleased about the commitment through all of the challenges that we have in the moment, the challenges of today, for instance, but through all of that, the relentless focus on carbon neutrality and climate change that I hear all across the enterprise. And so we're doing real things like doing all we can to move to using or organically grown, regeneratively farmed, locally sourced food. I was at UC Davis in September for a campus visit, appropriately masked, but for a campus visit, and we had lunch And the person who had lunch said that in that month that about 80% of their produce was organic, regeneratively farmed, locally sourced, and it was probably the highest quality. I was at a hospital food I'd had in my half century of being at hospitals, so we know it can be done. And I'm excited about people moving forward with that, with looking to electrify our fleet, do other things that will get us to carbon neutrality by 2025. So that's terrific. What am I? So there's more, but I'll time. But so we really continue to move forward. Let me say, I'm proud of our Nobel laureates. We have 8 people in 2 years who are either faculty members or alumni who won Nobel prizes. That's incredible. Last year we had 3 of the 6 Nobel prizes were awarded to UC affiliated people. So that's half for us and half for the rest of the world. I mean, that's amazing, an amazing contribution. Love to see that recognition. As I said, I'm proud of our students for graduating, getting their degrees, and going out in the world during these tough times. I'm proud of our faculty for continuing to do research and to move forward. I'm proud of our staff. So that's a great group. Let me tell you what I'm a little. I'd like to be a little different. How do I say this? I'll use me. I came to this work. I wanted to go to medical school. That's a great thing to do. I went to medical school, and I changed to an academic career because I loved the science and the research. It was great fun to be able to answer these problems. And so you could do that in an academic career. And I also loved the teaching part of it. I really enjoyed working with students and seeing success in their success. That was they're the product, and them doing well is a wonderful thing. And I would say that I meet with people more than I wish who are skeptical of the university's motivations, and we're treated like. That sounds. I'm not sure I say this correctly. Like we're a profit-seeking manufacturing enterprise or something, when the outcome that we have devoted our lives to is the success of our community, so that our community can lift communities around us and around the world. It's what we do and why we do it. It's what we're celebrated for. So I sometimes I've sometimes in conversations where that is sublimated, and we're treated like this entity that's not interested in the success of its students. It's we love students, actually. I mean, the only word to use would be love, and celebrate their success. We celebrate the success of our faculty. We love it, and I just find sometimes that with that we're approached with from a different perspective. Like, I don't know. So that's my little dig at the
Well, President Drake, I know that the audience has so many questions that they're dying to ask you. So I will turn this program over to Jessica, who will go over them with you.
Nice to speak with you, and I look forward to hearing from our colleagues.
Great, thank you. And sorry, before we launch into the Q&A session, just a reminder that now through December 31st is our end of year giving campaign, which helps us to end the year strong and continue hosting important programs like this in 2022 and beyond. I will put a link to where you can donate in the chat, and we appreciate any gifts you can make to support the council. And let's get into these questions. Thank you, Teresa and President Drake. The first question, I believe that higher education is important. However, workers with job skills are in greater demand. Do you feel that trade tech schools can meet this demand?
Yeah, so I think that there are a variety of schools, of institutions that can train people for a variety of the things that we need. And it's not either or. It's like there was a jazz club in San Francisco I used to go to called the Both And it's both and. So I think trade schools are an important part of our post-high school education enterprise, and I would support them. At Ohio State, actually, we were co-located with our regional campuses were co-located with trade schools always. I think it's an important part of our post-secondary education pathway. Absolutely.
UC has decided to end the use of standardized admissions tests like SATs and ACTs. How will you vet to ensure students are really ready before taking on a lot of student debt to attend university and succeed?
We found that the additional information given by those tests was marginal, and that we could, working with the other aspects that we use in our holistic comprehensive admissions process, make outstanding judgments about the likelihood that students would be successful at our institutions and contribute. So the SAT and ACT scores correlated with success, but they were not the only predictors of success. And using the other things that we do, we are able to generate a class that thus far looks to be just as successful as those we had before.
How can the UC system justify the high tuition cost since so many students go into debt for degrees that only lead to jobs that on average offer mediocre salaries?
Well, we know that overwhelmingly that students who graduate from the University of California out-earn students who don't have college degrees dramatically, and they actually out-earn those from many other colleges. So the fact is that our students do very well financially from attending the University of California. They also have other things that support quality of their lives going forward. They build strong relationships and are civically active. So the going to a university, going to the University of California really does a great deal to improve the quality of life of our graduates. As the first thing. And the second thing is that, again, we mentioned this before, we had have more than 1.6, 1.7 billion dollars of aid that goes to students every year. We do all that we can to make our schools affordable, and our debt load for our students that have debt. Most of our students graduate with no debt. More than 50% have no debt today, and those who have debt have less debt. The average debt of our students is around $20,000. The average debt nationally is $28,000, $29,000. So our students have less debt than the national average, and most of our students have none, and we're working to reduce that debt. So overall, the value proposition of attending the University of California is outstanding, and we want to continue to make sure that that's true.
What would you like to see happening in secondary education to help students be prepared to succeed at the college level?
You know, we, again, one of my old, I say a lot about things I did in the old days because each year there are more and more old days to talk about. One of the things we did at Irvine was we started actually a program and then finally a school in education, and partnered with the high schools and K through 12, but high schools as well, to do what we could to improve the quality of education there. We have outreach programs to hundreds and hundreds of high schools across California, and so we believe that we need to be partners with the K through 12 system, high schools, and specific to your question, to do all that we can to help them do a better job, do the best possible job of preparing students to attend our university or to go to the California State University system or the community college system. And I didn't mention our partners in California, the community colleges and the California State University system, but let me say also excellent systems and excellent opportunities. And we all work together as a consortium to try to provide the greatest number of opportunities for our students.
Thank you. Given the inability of many students to obtain campus housing and unaffordability of nearby housing at UC campuses, why hasn't the UC system looked into offering more remote classes?
Yeah, you know, we offer many more remote classes now than we did 2 years ago. And I believe that I'm sure that we will continue to offer remote classes to enhance the curriculum and to make it for a variety of reasons. Where we can sustain and improve education through remote learning or online, we will do that. It's a longer question than the time is going to allow, but let me say we have a richer portfolio of remote learning today, and that will continue and I think expand in the future. And we'll do that in conjunction with trying to do what we can to provide affordable housing for students.
How are you balancing the pension shortages, tuition pressures, and still finding a way to offer attractive pay and benefits to professors? Do you think the practice of tenure may have to be adjusted in the future to maintain the business model for universities?
Well, I appreciate the easy questions that you're coming up with. It's we work really hard to maintain and improve our excellence while maintaining and improving our affordability, and so there's always a tension there. And thus far, we've had good partners with the state, and we've worked very hard to have adequate funding to be able to support our faculty and staff, our faculty, staff, and students reasonably, while continuing to improve every day to improve the quality. But there's always that's the work of the work. That's every day, all day effort for us. Tenure, we believe very much. I'm a professor. I believe very much in academic freedom. I believe very much in the protections of academic freedom that are associated with tenure. And we want to continue to be modern as we look forward. And so we want to continue to be modern as we look forward.
Thank you. Has the enrollment of American Blacks increased in the last 5 years? As you see president, what action are you going to take to increase those numbers?
I appreciate that. I know that I'll use my prior institution again and say that we were able to double the freshman admissions of African American students over a 5.5-year period. So that was great. We have many programs that we use there to make that happen. We doubled African American admissions. We had an increase in 50% of Asian American admissions, and Latinx admissions were also up 50% during that time, I will say. So we were able to put into place programs that really did make us more diverse. We are a very diverse institution now, honestly, about twice the number of underrepresented minority students at our California schools compared. Again, I'll use the Big Ten as just relatively similarly sized public research universities. So we're very far there. We always find that we have challenges in African American students coming through the system and being admitted. Proposition 209 removed from the menu of choices we had in helping to increase African American diversity. So we've had to work doubly hard to try to create more and more opportunities for admissions of African American students. And I don't have the final numbers on all of our campuses this year. It takes a while to go between applications and admissions and then those who actually enroll. But I know at many of our campuses, Berkeley, UC Irvine, I remember these numbers from the fall. We had significant increases in the number of African American applicants and admittees this year to the highest level in our history. So not where we want to be at all, but better than it was in the past and moving forward.
Yeah. Do you feel that the athletic programs on campuses distract or intensify learning on campus?
I mentioned to Teresa earlier, I came from a family where the opportunity to go to college came because of athletics. And I was at we have our programs here. I was at a program for many years where athletics was an extremely prominent part of the daily life. And, we see the students, athletes who are on TV as we watch TV, but there are hundreds and hundreds of student athletes who are in other sports that are not so much on TV. And they do that because of the richness of the experience of participating in the sport. One of my sons was a varsity athlete in a non-TV sport on a team that won the national championship. It was just a terrific, a wonderful life experience. And so I think there's a great deal that is learned through athletics for the participants in the athletic programs, for what leadership, commitment, dedication, focus, all of those things. I have two more things to say about it. It's also a great community builder. It brings people together and gives one a sense of community. You root for the side and all, and I think that's it's all of us like being parts of communities. Another thing, though, that I noticed when I was admitting students from when I was at medical school, admissions dean, is that I began wanting to give students credit for an academic slump during their season. So if it's a basketball player, I said, well, if your grades dropped a little bit in the winter quarter because you were playing games, that's okay. What I found is that as often as not, the grades actually were better during season than they were off season. And I don't want to overly explain that. I mean, I explained it to myself by saying that they really were focused on managing their time well because they had to. But I found that the correction factor that I thought I would have to build in wasn't necessarily even necessary, and that students were able to balance these things well. And so I think that properly balanced athletics and other extracurricular activities can be a strong part of collegiate education.
Well, this final question, and it's kind of, I guess, a plug for the UC system. Can you talk about what sets UC apart from other state university systems, such as State University New York, University of Texas, et cetera? How would you describe the difference to a prospective student or someone from another state or country?
Well, in the plug for UC, I would not compare myself to our colleagues in a negative way. Those are wonderful systems and wonderful universities and wonderful choices. And there are many wonderful universities across this country. And we're really fortunate as a country to have the best university system and the best universities anywhere in the world. And so I'm proud to be a part of that. We rank very highly on the things that the rankings agencies use. We have wonderful students that do incredibly well. We have our faculty are, as I mentioned to Teresa, just things as prestigious and narrow as the Nobel Prize. Year after year, we show up at the top ranks around the world. No one competes with us in that category. And the quality of our people, our students, our faculty, and our staff as people, the engagement with the university is something that is wonderful. So there are multiple wonderful choices. We're pleased and proud to be one of them and doing everything we can to be better every day.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, President Drake. And Teresa, I will turn this back over to you. Thank you.
Well, President Drake, I am going to just close this program with a fun question for you. You are a huge music fan. You're an accomplished guitarist, and you are a board member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I also noticed that you have a Spotify playlist from Ohio State University Press. So I'm wondering, when are you going to put out a UC Press Drake playlist, and what will be the #1 song on it?
Great. So I haven't done that yet. I think, but I'd love to. And what I'm thinking about, you said accomplished guitarist. I own a guitar. I'll leave it at that, and I play on it. That's the best I could say. That really, I taught a course of, that had to do with music and civil rights and all. And I think it's a great idea for this winter to put out a playlist. And I would put out a playlist that featured Miles Davis and John Coltrane. I think that their work, the lives that they lived, the circumstances of their growing through the 50s and into the 60s is important historically. And so that would be who I would actually feature, thinking today about something for the holiday season. There are some great songs that I'd love for, whenever possible, even the younger generation, to learn more about that classic American music, American classical music, that I call it in many ways, which is jazz. So as you asked that question, I think that's a great idea. It'll give me something fun to work on.
I will look forward to seeing that on Spotify. Thank you so much. It was an honor to share the time with you. And I will turn the program back to Kim, who will conclude the program.
Always good to see you. Happy holidays.
President Drake, thank you so very much. This was such an encouraging discussion. All of your great accomplishments. We'd love to have you back next year and hear more about the increase in diversity, affordability, all your improvements in housing. It really is such a positive message to us. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Kim. Enjoyed it very much, and happy holidays to you as well.
You too. Thank you so much. For our viewers, we have a few wonderful upcoming events. Let me just run through them very quickly. Next week, we have a very special member film screening, Who We Are, A Chronicle of Racism in America. It will be followed, the screenings will be followed on December 9th with a live conversation with the writers and the 2 co-directors of that film. Also next week, we have, of course, Politics in the Time of Coronavirus with politics professor Dan Schnur. And on December 15th, we have Deputy Assistant Secretary for Japan and Korea, Mark Lambert. So please go to our website today at lawacth.org. Register today, become a member, make a donation. Every bit helps. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.